Comey acted in an outrageous way. I think he should take a hard look at what he has done. And I think it would not be a bad thing for the American people if he did step down.
And finally, do you believe that Jim Comey should resign, Senator Reid?
Of course.
Did you want to see him gone?
So it's absolutely true that Democrats have been very critical of James Comey, and many of us did call for his resignation.
It's hard to be a director of such an important institution when that trust is no longer there.
Can you tell us anything about the discussion?
No, it's classified, and we can't tell you anything. All I can tell you is the FBI director has no credibility.
FBI director not to send the letter. Comey ignored the warning and sent that letter to lawmakers.
We even released internal FBI memos and interview notes. I may have missed this, but in my 42 years here, I've never seen anything like that.
Comey can render his country now is to resign. Failing that, Jeff Sessions should invite him for a meeting after he's confirmed as Attorney General and ask for him to resign.
I agree with the Wall Street Journal. It's in the best interest of the country that he step down.
Joe, opine, frankly, publicly about legal conduct. The president ought to fire Comey immediately, and he ought to initiate an investigation.
There needs to be restoration of the credibility of the FBI.
Yes. No,
I mean, that needed to be done.
And I think he should resign because he's damaged the FBI's reputation.
The faith of the people at the FBI is somewhat shaken in their leadership, and I think the faith of the country is in the director of the FBI is somewhat perilous. Given all of that, I think he ought to spend more time with his family.
The answer is that he resigns by midnight tonight, or early enough that the world can know that
maybe he's not in the right job.
And focus on the things Americans care about. So let me ask you about that. You're somewhat halfway home on health care. You still have tax reform to do, a spending bill, debt ceiling, and infrastructure. That's just
pretty big list.
Pretty big list, right? But what happened yesterday, you could argue, just widened the divide and made D.C. politics more toxic. So how do you go about accomplishing all of those things with now the heightened political environment that we're in?
Frankly, I'm surprised that it did create a divide, since you've had so many Republicans and Democrats repeatedly calling for Director Comey to be gone. Frankly, I don't think it matters what this president says. You're going to have Democrats come out and fight him every single step of the way. I think that's one of the things that's wrong with Washington, and I think that's one of the reasons that we've got to get back to focusing on those issues and, frankly, draining the swamp a little bit further.
Was he surprised by the Democratic backlash? Did he anticipate it, considering some of the past statements?
How could he have, considering the fact that most of the people that are declaring war today were the very ones that were begging for Director Comey to be fired? If Hillary Clinton had won the election, which thank God she didn't, but if she had, and she had been in the same position, she would have fired Comey immediately, and the very Democrats that are criticizing the president today would be dancing in the streets celebrating. So it's just I think the purest form of hypocrisy. Jennifer?
Thanks, Sarah. 2 questions.
And here are the problems, according to those who are skeptical of this decision and this president. First, President Trump shares exactly 0 of Rosenstein's concerns about allegedly how unfair Comey was to Hillary Clinton. In fact, the only problem that President Trump has ever had about Comey's behavior relating to Hillary Clinton was that he did not charge her with a crime. And President Trump, then citizen Trump, clearly loved it when Comey essentially reopened the Clinton case late in the campaign. It's as if we're expected to have all been blinded by that flashy memory eraser thing from Men in Black. And we wouldn't remember all the times that Trump expressed concern that Comey didn't charge Hillary and then praised him for raising questions about her last October and afterwards.
I respect the fact that Director Comey was able to come back after what he did. It took guts for Director Comey to make the move that he made in light of the kind of opposition he had, where they're trying to protect her from criminal prosecution. He's become more famous than me.
Then, of course, let us not forget the additional context that the FBI is in the middle of investigating whether anyone in the Trump campaign orbit had anything to do with the Russian government attempts to interfere in the U.S. elections last year. In fact, Director Comey's firing comes a day after potentially embarrassing testimony for the White House about the Russia investigation from the then acting Attorney General Sally Yates. Yates, of course, also fired by President Trump just days after warning the White House that she thought then National Security Advisor Michael Flynn had been compromised by Russia, though the official reason for the Yates firing was her refusal to implement the travel ban. On Capitol Hill this evening, concern and alarm, and that's from Republicans. Tweeted Senator Jeff Flake, Republican of Arizona, quote, "I've spent the last several hours trying to find an acceptable rationale for the timing of Comey's firing. I just can't do it," unquote. Senator John McCain, in his statement, called the firing disappointing and said, quote, "The president's decision to remove the FBI director only confirms the need and the urgency for a special congressional committee to investigate Russia's interference in the 2016 election." The chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Richard Burr of North Carolina, quote, "I am troubled by the timing and reasoning of Director Comey's termination." And one editorial note coming in from Yorba Linda, California, with the Nixon Library objecting to anyone on social media or the media calling this evening's action Nixonian. Fun fact, the library tweeted, President Nixon never fired the director of the FBI. Hashtag not Nixonian.
Hi, I'm Tommy, and it's time for Final Thoughts. So let's talk about the Comey firing. I'm going to make this short and sweet, so here it is. Whether you agree or disagree with the president's decision is beside the point. What's really interesting here is the way the Democrat/alt-left radical psychos are reacting. And as you could imagine, the double standard party is freaking out over this. First of all, what don't they freak out about at this point? I mean, really. But seriously, it's amazing how many of these same folks now accusing President Trump of hiding something didn't seem to find it sketchy that Hillary had a private server in her basement, and deleted 33,000 emails. Selective concern, eh? And this whole Comey left-wing reaction thing is really ironic and pretty special, considering the Democrats, with Queen Hillary at the helm, have been blaming Comey for their loss for the last 6 months. In fact, Chuck Schumer publicly stated he lost confidence in Comey. That to Dirty Harry Reid and the Democratic Representative Steve Cohen. They've been asking for Comey's head on a spike for months, but now his firing is Nixon-esque? Give me a break. You know damn well one of Hillary's first actions as president would have been to get rid of Comey, and the leftists would have been in celebration. This isn't about Russian ties or concern for the country. This is another episode of the leftist pathetic and bitter attempt to torpedo President Trump. It's all white noise at this point, and it's a shame the mainstream media is in on it. It really is. They've done nothing but harass and nitpick President Trump since day one. And at this point, we can't trust them to hold our president accountable when they can't even hold themselves accountable for their bias and left-wing bullshit disguised as news. Shame on you. Perhaps care about the country more and your angry leftist bitterness less. Maybe then you could actually contribute something to this country more meaningful than, I don't know, marches and anti-Trump resistance tantrums. But those are just my final thoughts. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Tommy Lahren from Dallas. God bless, and take care.
Now, the press put on a remarkable show of distress over Director Comey being fired, but don't forget, politicians are paid performers too, good ones. Their performance last night was better than anything you saw on television. Watch this.
This is the kind of authoritarian behavior we've seen spread in other parts of the world. If we don't stop it now, I'm very worried about what could happen.
I think the president took this action because he feels the noose tightening in the Russia investigation.
We face a looming constitutional crisis, very much like happened in 1973, the Midnight Massacre.
Comey was not fired because of Hillary. Comey was fired because of the Russians.
It's just insane, actually. Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney is a Democrat representing New York, and he joins us now. So many questions for you, Congressman. First, how could it be a constitutional crisis when the president did something that he's allowed to under the Constitution?
Look, I don't think it's a constitutional crisis, but I think it is a cause for concern. And the reason is because Donald Trump was, for Jim Comey before he was against him. And the question is, what changed?
No, that's an entirely fair question. And I would ask the same question of you and the Democratic leadership. You're totally against Jim Comey, saying we don't have any confidence in him. He ought to be canned. And when he is, it's looming fascism. I mean, I guess my question, look, Elizabeth Warren can't know why he was fired. Elizabeth Warren has a massive following on social media in American life. People listen to her. And when she gets on television and says, I know why he was fired, it's because of Russia, you actually don't know that. And you're an opinion leader. Why are you saying crap like that you don't know is true? That's totally irresponsible. Like, why would you say something like that?
Well, I wouldn't let Elizabeth Warren get to you, Tucker, but I would be concerned.
Why wouldn't I?
I would be concerned.
Her line's being parroted by the rest of you.
Excuse me. Well, not by me, but I would be concerned when the FBI director is investigating someone and that person fires them. That's of concern. And by the way, he's the third federal prosecutor who's been fired by this president, who is looking into the White House or to this president. And that seems like a conflict.
Hold on. Was Trump, you may be breaking news. I didn't realize Trump was the subject of an investigation by the FBI. I don't think we know that either, do we?
Oh, I think the FBI director has made perfectly clear that the Trump campaign and a bunch of people around the president are being investigated.
Well, no, you just said he was investigating Trump, and I didn't know that. Do you know that you have knowledge that the rest of us weren't aware of?
Oh, come on, Tucker. I think when...
No, don't come on. You said it. You're a member of Congress. Tell me what you meant.
I'll tell you exactly what I meant. I would say that you're investigating senior officials of the Trump campaign for a variety of connections to the Russians. The FBI director and the entire intelligence community says that's a big deal. And you've now got the president of the United States firing the person who's investigating him. That is unprecedented in American history. No president has ever fired an FBI director for that reason. So you know what? That's probably a headline.
For that reason, we don't know that he fired him for that reason. And I would remind you that you're an elected official with a responsibility to say things you can prove and that are true. And you're violating that responsibility because you don't know why he got fired. And I would also say, if you're suggesting that the Russia investigation will somehow end now, or that it won't, in fact, become magnified and more intense, you're just wrong. Like, if he tried to cover up, it's not working.
Well, the Watergate investigation didn't end when Richard Nixon fired, Archibald Cox. Doesn't make it right. And I do think you ought to look at what the White House said within the last hour. They changed their story. Maybe you noticed. It is no longer the White House story, like it was all day, that this was Rod Rosenstein's idea at the Justice Department. We now know, because the White House just said it, that the president met with the Attorney General, who is supposed to be recused, and the Deputy Attorney General on Monday, expressed his concerns about Jim Comey's testimony about Russia, Tucker, and concluded that he should go. And then the Deputy Attorney General went back and wrote that memo. That wasn't their story this morning. They just admitted it. I'd take that seriously.
I'm not in charge of the White House storyline, thank heaven. I'm merely an American citizen. And Jim Comey, the other day, before Congress, made a statement to the effect of, I like Loretta Lynch, so I'm not attacking her personally. And to me, that summed up the problem with Jim Comey. His personal feelings about any person, former Attorney General, former Senator from New York, Hillary Clinton, anybody, should play, by definition, no role in his job as FBI director. This guy was a compromised FBI director. I'm not saying that as a partisan. I'm saying it as an American. I know that you agree with me.
I do agree with you.
So why shouldn't we be thankful that he's no longer running the world's most powerful law enforcement agency?
I am glad that he is gone. I think he did a terrible job, and I'm happy to agree with you on that. But I do think we should be careful when that person is also performing an investigation and he is fired abruptly, without warning, and that firing is unprecedented in American history.
Okay,
what would have been better is to have a replacement in place who was a qualified person to take over, or to do it in a more professional way. Why do you fire Preet Bharara without warning? Why do you fire Jim Comey without warning? By the way, it's deeply disrespectful to the FBI that does really important counterterrorist investigations, organized crime investigations. Why would you knock out the leader without any opportunity to do a transition, to help the replacement learn from what he's doing? This is very disruptive, and it's not necessary.
Because they thought he was incompetent. Because, look, again,
well, he was incompetent the day before if he was incompetent last night.
But you don't either, and I think...
No, excuse me, Tucker, can I stop you right there?
Yeah.
No, seriously, the White House an hour ago just said more about why they did it, and this is the White House speaking.
You don't believe a thing they say. You don't believe a thing they say.
I'm telling you what
the fact remains, neither of us knows what exactly happened.
Well, Tucker, in the interest of informing...
irresponsible things in the meantime.
In the interest of informing your viewers, excuse me, the White House just said that the president watched the director's testimony, became concerned about it, and met with the Attorney General, who was supposed to be recused, and the Deputy Attorney on Monday. That was unknown just an hour ago.
Yeah, and I remain in the dark as to all the details, as do you.
Well, that's what I'm here for.
I'm not pretending
to shed
that
some light
I understand the motives of people with whom I haven't spoken. We're out of time. Congressman, thank you for joining us.
Always a pleasure.